And hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Way of the Truth Warrior. My name is David Whitehead. Happy to be your host once again. Adding an extra show this week. We got a bonus show today, and I have a very special guest that I'm excited to talk to. And I just spent the day doing a little bit of work, catching up on some stuff, and watching the very nauseating inquiry with Prime Minister Justin Twinkle Toes Trudeau when he hit the stand with his testimony that he obviously was very well prepared for. But we got some good things out of it. And I've got a few clips we're going to go through just to highlight a few of the key points that I noticed and my very special my very special guest to join me on today's show, which we're going to do some ranting. We're going to talk about some stuff. She is a professional. She was working with Global TV News. She was a director for over 20 years, I believe. She was a veteran, and she was actually fired from her position for speaking out. And she's now considered a mainstream media whistleblower here in Canada. She's local in British Columbia. Every time I would go down to the legislative building in Victoria, people would come up and be like, "You've got to get Anita on. She's awesome. She knows what's up and she's speaking the truth." So I'm very happy to have Anita Krishna with me. And we are going to talk about what just went down with this inquiry. So without further ado, let me go ahead and bring her in. There she is. Anita, how you doing? Thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to Truth Warrior.
Oh my gosh, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to meet you and thrilled to be here. Thank you for that lovely intro. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I thank you because I've actually been putting a call out this entire time throughout the pandemic for people to come from within the media, within the medical system, doctors, lawyers, politicians, anybody. If I was asking, if anybody within the system could speak out, you'll see that you have a lot of support. You have a lot of people that will support you, but it is hard. It takes a lot of courage. And so the fact that you used to work in the belly of the beast, so to speak, you with Global News, you had a fantastic career going. Tell us a little bit about that, your journey, what happened, and we'll kind of start going from there.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, you're from BC, so you know that in British Columbia, Global News, formerly BCTV, is the main station here. We are the highest rated station in this province. I mean,
Right.
around other places, CBC is more popular or CTV or what have you, but anybody that lives in British Columbia knows that Global is where it's at in terms of ratings. I don't know what they're doing now, but and then it was a few years ago that they started BC One. So that's a channel I directed newscasts on that channel too. Part of my job there, I was a backfill director. So I directed pretty much and jumped in and did every show. So I did like your local newscasts, your 5 o'clock, your 6 o'clock, your noon. I directed newscasts on BC One, but I'd also jump in and occasionally do Global National and all that. So I bounced around and I got to know a lot of people, a lot of the producers, and I was entrenched in the newsroom because I'd worked there for 20 years. I actually worked there for 24 years, actually. And now I'm
Oh,
aging
wow.
myself, which is really annoying. But I remember listen, this is how old I am. I remember when Mark Madriga started. Okay. I remember the day he walked in the building and it's like, oh, here's the new weather guy. And I was like, oh, hi, here's the new weather guy. I mean, that's how long I've been there. And and for many years, well, for when I first started, I was an assistant director, and all that means is you just sit in the control room and you time out the newscast with a stopwatch. So when the director rolls a story, if the story is 2 minutes and 17 seconds, back in the day we hit a stopwatch and go 1 minute 30 seconds. That was my job, just timing stuff out. So I just had a very sort of technical job. I didn't find it very exciting. It's just that when you tell people, "Oh, I worked at Global News," they get very excited, right? And then as the years went on, I started to direct, but then we laid off a lot of people and we brought in quite a bit of automation. So then I mainly was a director using automation. So that means that I would cut the cameras and direct the show and call the shots, but operate also. So I became a technical director, which is actually hilarious to me because I'm not a technical person at all. But I did that job and I did that directing shows for about 11 years. So I was there a long time. And I have to say that in the global newsroom, all of the reporters and the producers and the anchors, I never thought them to be I thought them to be great people. I was never intimidated by them or starstruck because I worked with them for so long. To me, they're just human beings. And so I never thought that I would see this day come, but I just never thought I would see this day come. But one thing we have to remember is that journalists are human beings too, right? So just as your neighbor had the
Mm.
wolves over them, and that your friends or your mother-in-law or whoever doesn't agree with you about all this COVID stuff, they are the same. Some people knew and didn't say anything. Those people, I'm getting tired of those people now that know and don't say anything. But some people were clueless about any of this information. So I guess it's my sort of thing is they weren't bad people, but now I find them completely irredeemable. I'm so upset when I watch the newscast. I was so devastated by the convoy coverage. I couldn't believe that we could say those things. And I knew exactly what we were doing. And that for people that I worked with to have reported in that way, and I can get into examples if you like. Um, I don't even know how to describe how utterly painful it was to watch people that I work with call people who went to the convoy January 6th type insurgent terrorists. Like these were my friends. I'm watching them on TV. And I remember them saying, even before the truckers got there, oh, they could have guns. You know, some of these guys are white supremacists and all that. I'm like I couldn't believe that my people I knew could write and report in that way because it was totally inaccurate.
Wow. And so what happened with because it was fired. You didn't just leave, right? Was it over the mandates? Like maybe tell a little bit about that
Mm-mm.
story.
Oh no, like I didn't get fired. I just got fired for being me. I just got fired for for talking. I've told this story a few times, but I didn't know why we didn't report about the lab leak and the investigation. Like I'm like, guys, don't you know anything about the Wuhan market and the fact that we would let everybody to believe that the virus came from a wet market was inaccurate when there's a bloody laboratory like 3 miles away that we now know was doing some sort of gain of function research. I mean, God knows where the heck this actually came from. It could be different laboratories now. You must look to that laboratory. And I knew about this WHO investigation, and a long time ago, I heard about Peter Daszak, not because of, which is a name I'm sure many people who follow you will know, like they know all this information. Not this information is readily available to anyone who's just thinking, where did this come from? Which is what I was thinking. So I started looking. I'm not a reporter. I'm a director. I'm a technical director. But I started to say in the newsroom, guys, we're not reporting this information. And people would just be like, well, people would just be like, as soon as I said laboratory, they laughed in your face. And they immediately called you a conspiracy theorist, and they immediately dismissed you. I'm like, how can you think this already? Have you looked into it? In my own ignorance, I was thinking that these guys wanted to report what the truth was. But I couldn't understand. I still to this day don't understand how they dismissed it so readily. Like what went through their mind that they could, because you couldn't even talk about it for the longest time. I still can't
Mm.
psychologically figure out why that was. And then as time went on, I started to talk about these PCR tests. I'm like, hey, have you heard about this guy, Kerry Mullis, who invented it? And all the things that we know. When I would bring them up in the newsroom, I remember telling the guy who's the 11 o'clock anchor there right now, who's super nice. I was like, these PCR tests, they ramp up the cycles, you get false positives, and that is why everybody thinks they're sick. There is no asymptomatic stuff. I mean, how can that be possible? Right. And when I said about the PCR test, he laughed at me. And this other producer laughed at me too. They laughed almost on cue. And I began to not recognize human beings anymore. I was just, and I had gotten into major fights about hydroxychloroquine with one of their anchors, also the tall 6 o'clock anchor. Boy, he and I used to really disagree. And I thought, how can you have such a strong opinion on a medication you can't even bloody pronounce, for God's sake? Like, it's like, why do you know already it doesn't work? And why are you mad if someone wants to try it? Because my cousin was taking that medication and she got COVID. She took it for another reason. She got COVID and she called me one day and she's like, Anita, I think that I got better because I was taking hydroxychloroquine. She was very, very sick with what she thinks was COVID for 8 days. And 8 days isn't too bad, and she recovered. So when I went to work, I said, "Oh my God, my cousin," because there's all that scuttlebutt about that medication, right? And I told them they're at work, and the anchor just yelled at me. He was just like, "Oh, she thinks it worked. Oh, she thinks it works. Really, really? What proof? Yeah, she thinks it works. What do you want from me, right?" And then I would get emails to be told to be quiet. And long story short, I was very concerned about us telling pregnant women, because there was something that came on the wire that said, oh, sorry, well, something came on the wire that said that this vaccine was approved for 5 to 11-year-olds. I'm like, it can't be. It's not. You got to look into this. That was one issue. But I remember taking issue with running a story telling pregnant women to take it. And I think it was really just the pregnant woman thing that just, I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I started to look for a normal job. This was in December of or November, December, before I got fired. And I was just looking for a normal job to work in an office or something, because I was like, I cannot be here. I cannot put this story on the air and manipulate everybody, because every story we ran was a complete and utter manipulation. And then I went to a rally, I got busted, yada yada, and then they just fired me. I can't even remember the reason they fired me, but they literally escorted me out of the building one day when my mask was dangling off my face. I was directing the 5 o'clock news, and my mask was dangling, and somebody snitched on me and said, Anita's mask is dangling. My mask was pretty much always dangling. And then they said, get out. You are not adhering to mask protocol. Get out. But they were just looking for a reason to get me out because I kept chirping up. And they fired me soon after that. And I actually can't even really remember the reason that they fired me. I could sue, I have a letter somewhere, but I just tossed it aside. I barely even look at it because it's not worth the paper it's written on.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. I mean, just it's fear, right? Like that's I think what starts it, and then because people are in fear, they go to what they think they need to trust. We don't question the government narrative. We don't question what these doctors are telling us. Even though you should question, why is there only certain specific doctors brought on television to report this? And then yet we have a whole array of world-class, world-renowned doctors and experts that have a totally different perspective and are actually warning people about this. Why are they censoring those guys? Like, and it's amazing that you were the one that put the challenge to them and kept going and stood up for
Yeah.
yourself. And, and you're right. They probably were just looking for some reason to take you out. You're being too much of a problem over there.
Yeah.
And it's just the way it is. Right. And my father worked as a technical engineer for many years at CTV News in
Oh,
Saskatchewan.
okay.
And he would say the same thing. He's like, most of the people I work with, really good people, but there's sort of this interesting culture that exists in these media departments. And for whatever reason, the vast majority of the population just took this hook, line, and sinker, didn't question it. And yet, look at all the stuff that's coming out right now. I find it very interesting. We're going to talk a little about this inquiry and all that stuff that went down with the truckers and everything. And, you've got Trudeau on the stand with the nerve to basically repeat 2020 talking points about the vaccine. Like, we've got
Oh,
studies from all over. We've got even the Washington Post reported on the front page, that it's the vaccinated that are the highest death rates in the hospitals in the US. That's coming from the Washington Post, which would be like the global news of, like they're
mhm.
very mainstream.
Yeah.
And on I could go with examples that are contradicting it, as well as just people's personal experience. How many people do you know, especially those listening, of everybody that went and did all the protocols and got all the jabs, and yet they're still getting sick? And now a lot of them are having a lot of these side effects that you're just not allowed to talk about. I
Mm-hmm.
personally know people, Anita, that are Their lives are ruined because of these shots. They're
Mhm,
athletes that they can't even go up the stairs anymore. Nurses,
mhm,
paramedics. Behind the
mhm.
scenes, they've been emailing me the whole time, and their lives are destroyed, and nobody wants to talk to them. No journalist is interviewing them. They've got to go on podcasts like mine to be heard. And I just think that's sad. So, what do you think before we jump into the convoy and start kind of bitching out Trudeau a little bit,
Yeah.
which he's going to get a right one, eh? What do we? What can you say about the climate in general of media in Canada as this has unfolded? Do you think the reason it's so biased is because of the government money that they're getting? Do you think there's other reasons why they're all singing the same tune on this and they're not publishing the truth? What do you think the reason is that the media in Canada is so silent on these other perspectives?
For for the time that I was there, I couldn't understand because if a vaccine injured person phoned our newsroom, we would, like if any person phoned our newsroom with a compelling story saying, "Look, I took two aspirin or something, and now I'm in a wheelchair," we would cover that story. We'd go, "Hey guys, hey man, we got to look into this here." But vaccine injured people, I dare anyone to phone the newsroom right now and go and say their story of how they can't breathe when they go up the steps, or go and say anything. I just ran into a lady and her cousin took a Pfizer shot, mandated. She has a 5-year-old son. She's now in a wheelchair. She hasn't walked since January. It's November. Go phone the newsroom, 604-420-2288. Go phone them. That's a public number. Go and phone them and say, I have been vaccine injured. Will you run my story? And the person that answers the phone will take the notes and say, okay, we'll look into it. We'll get back to you. That story will never see the light of day. Why? Come on. Like, I don't know why. I know that the Trudeau government gave all the media outlets this bailout money. And I think I heard lately that some of this bailout money came in the way of not actually just a check, but like sort of backdoor tax breaks or something. So there's some huge financial incentive to not report that way. So it's like if one of your sponsors is a furniture company, you're not really ever going to diss the furniture company. You never be like, I bought this shitty couch from wherever. Like so yes, that is a huge part of it, is where your bread is buttered and you do not go against the hand that feeds you. And the higher ups know how that money was dispersed. People like me that were timing newscasts or directing newscasts, we don't see extra money. The, the bosses there see the extra money, so they know how that comes down. But the problem is, if you're a journalist, you don't get to say, you don't get to say, I'm not going to look at that part of the story. That is your freaking job as a journalist, and you owe it to the public to give informed consent and to be transparent. How everybody just clammed up there. I know how people clammed up because people were super scared of not making their Tesla payments, of not being able to pay their mortgage. Everybody there has a friggin' Tesla, right? So you
Did
and
they
my
leave Twitter though after Elon Musk took over? Isn't that
no,
a
they're
weird
still on
contradiction?
Twitter,
But
but they're
still,
starting to rumble that they're going to have to go somewhere else or
oh yeah.
whatever. Well, and they're very quiet on Twitter. All the newsy people, right? Because what are they going to tweet about? Anything that's actually news, they don't. But I guess what I'm saying is, why didn't they collectively rise up and say, guys, we really need to report, we need to make some changes here? And they never collectively did that. They could make a huge change in this province if they even just wrote one voiceover that was the truth, one 30-second little item that was the truth. But they don't. And why they don't is maybe are they all paralyzed with fear? I know tons of people there that were paralyzed with fear because everybody has a job. No one wants to lose it. And you're just going to shut up and put up. But I have to pay my mortgage too. What do you think? Santa Claus pays my mortgage for me? Like what? I went and got another job, right? Like I have children. I have 2 children, 2 boys. Like there's other work you can do. You can figure it out. Is it really worth what you have done to people in this province? I don't, I don't have an explanation for that as to what they could have done better. They could have all gotten together and said, we got to go another way. But when the convoy hit, they chose not to, and they chose to ignore it. They chose to. When the day all those trucks arrived in Ottawa in the dead of winter, if you turned on the 6 o'clock news, which on the weekend I used to direct that show, you didn't see an item about it. So if you were an alien and you just landed on this planet, you turn on the 6 o'clock news, you wouldn't know there's a convoy going on because we ignored it. They ignored it. And if I was directing that show, I would have had to ignore it too, because I have to just follow the rundown. And it's a absolute disgusting shame, because that's why so many people are so unaware of such big issues. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
awful.
that's really sad to hear, but it makes a lot of sense. And the best I've come up with an explanation as to why, see, because this is where it gets really interesting, is that not only did the Vancouver or BC Global News have that same culture, so did all of the mainstream media across Canada and the world, Anita, the
Mhm.
entire world. This is where it's like, okay, hold on a minute. When I
Yeah.
tune into CNN, they're saying the same stuff as CBC News, saying the
Yep.
same stuff as Global News, not covering it. They're all slanting the stories. See, in true journalism, there is no slanting. There's just
No.
presentation of facts, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're thinking like something like CBC News, which is supposed to be publicly funded by taxpayer dollars, you would think there would be an unbiased just presentation of all the sides to the story. You would run a story on the people that got a vaccine and apparently it saved their life, and then you run a story on someone that got injured, or you run a story on the truckers, and then you run a story with one of the Ottawa residents who couldn't take the honking. Like, at least do that. But they didn't
Yeah.
even do that. It was like
No.
an all-out assault on, and to the point where here we have the prime minister, and I'll play this clip in a second, where he's out there labeling and making statements and very broad judgments of anybody that's going against his government's policies. And I know on the stand today, he just wanted to blame it all on COVID, which is very convenient, but it's government policy that affected people's lives. And it's as if when this rolled out, I'm jumping around too much. Let me go back.
Yeah.
What I was going to say about the media and why there's this big, why everybody's following the script is because you think of it as like something that's compartmentalized, right? Like the military, where everybody's on a need to know basis. Everybody has their job. Everybody's sort of a cog in a big wheel. And it's the upper management that they get from their sponsors or the people that, the board level or whatever. There's sort of like a red phone that rings where the direction comes in and then it
Mhm.
filters down. And the more
Yeah.
it filters down, the less people know about why. They just go along with it. And
Totally.
if you watch like anything on this, have you ever heard of the Ash experiment that was
Mhm.
done in, I think it was in the 70s, 60s or 70s? And it was basically like a human behavior experiment as to why people go along with the group. So they would have, people pretending to give the wrong answer to a very obvious question, and only one guy in the room is the
Oh, yeah.
logical person, doesn't know. And he's like, why is everybody answering the most obviously wrong answer? And then he starts going against the crowd for a little bit. And then in the experiment, they would see everybody would eventually just follow what everybody else was doing and answer the wrong answer, even though they knew it was wrong. And I guess that kind of, so it's human psychology in a sense, right?
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that, if you think of the fact that the media is sponsored by government, also by the pharmaceutical industry, that's a huge aspect of that. You start looking into the investing firms that have major shares, the shareholders that have major shares in these multimedia organizations. You start boiling it down to like maybe 3 or 4 top world investing firms that
Mhm.
own share and influence in all of these different companies. And they own share and influence in Costco, Target, Walmart, and the
Mm.
news, and Pfizer, and Moderna, and like you kind of go, oh, like it kind of makes more sense that
Mhm.
if they're like, well, we want to steer everybody into this one solution for this problem, and that way we can profit off of it. We don't want them to know about things like therapeutics, natural vitamin C, D, zinc, these types of
Mhm.
things, because
Mhm.
we don't profit off of it. We don't benefit off of that. And it's funny though, because the media should act independently from that. Because as you said, if somebody called in and said,
Mhm.
I have had a horrible experience, or I lost a loved one right after the jab or whatever,
Mhm.
like you could be an award-winning journalist or be the first one to present this story to the world if you had the facts, right? But
Yeah.
instead of doing that, everybody shuts up and you wonder, how does that happen, right? And I think it's that process, and I think that's what we've seen. And so the fact that you came out and said, "Fine, fire me here. I'm just going to go become an independent journalist or whatever you're doing, a Substack. You're doing your work." I mean,
Mhm.
that's amazing, and we need more people to do it. And I am glad to see more journalists stepping out now. I wish there were more, but hey, at least you got podcasters like me doing this from our home, and we'll bring people like you on, and we'll tell people the truth. You know what I mean?
I really I couldn't be more disappointed in the industry that I came from for going along with this. I mean, it's not like we stole $50 from a little old lady and we're all like tee hee quiet about it. We ruined people's lives and everybody just went with it. And I remember the last day that I worked there, I passed by one of the anchors. Um, she couldn't look me in the eye. And she's a very confident woman. She's very confident. And I was so uh, strong in my conviction that what we were doing was wrong. I was getting hassled by one of my supervisors, and I was walking down the hall, and she saw me and looked down. And I'll never forget that because she's not that type. She'll look you in the eye with attitude, right? She's very confident, but she looked down and she knows. She knows. And it's wrong. What we did was wrong. We had a duty to report accurately. And the government, if we don't put the government on TV like we were doing on BC One with those ridiculous, endless Bonnie Henry, Adrian Dix press conferences, which I had my fill of doing those. If we didn't put that on, how does the message get out? We do it. Television does it. And that's why everybody runs around and goes, oh, listen to the science. Are you going to listen to the science? You are not listening to any science. Come on. You're listening to the TV. And the TV, for some reason, is lying. And you and I probably both feel crazy because almost every day, although I'm starting to not feel as crazy, although it does happen, when you see it all over the world, you're like, okay, maybe I am wrong, but no, we're not wrong because of the Trusted News Initiative, because the Biden administration gave so much money to the media, because Bill and Melinda Gates are feeding the media all over the place. And when you look up Bill and Melinda Gates, they fund so many things. They're huge contributors to the WHO or whatever. All those things that we hear about, we think is like a part of a movie. It's like, no, that's not part of a movie. That's true. And you were so right about what you said, that the information just trickles down and people just accept it. And even though you know that it's the wrong thing, you go along with it because it's too scary to not go along with it. I guess. Although I don't feel scared because I can just get another job. I don't care where I work. Whereas if you're an anchor, are you going to go full jeans at the Gap? No, you're not. Am I? Yeah. I don't care. I don't care that I was a director. If you want to pay me $40 an hour to put light bulbs in boxes, I'll do that. I don't care, right? I have no ego about that. That's a very ego-driven industry too, which causes you to shut up also. It's really awful. And thank God for people like you and all the independents because you're the real deal. I mean, me too, a little bit. Like I'm doing my thing, but we're the new voice and we are telling the stories that they chose not to tell. They chose not to tell, so we'll tell it.
I love it. And you know what? You just have something, Anita, that those people didn't have, which is something called moral integrity, where you possessed the courage to say, I'm willing to take the risk to lose this career. I rely on myself. I know I can pick myself up and go get something else. And I'm not gonna fight for this job if they're gonna kick me out. You know, my dad did the same. He lost his job of 40 years working for CTV, and he wanted to get out anyways. But they just let him go like he was nothing because he didn't want to take these jabs. But he was fine with it. Now he's like, I'm gonna retire early. He got remarried and he's living his best life right now. And I just said, all right, and then we've had other journalists step forward for sure. We've had a lot more doctors now, which
Mm,
is great to see. We've always had some of those guys. Like I think of people like Dr. Roger Hodkinson,
mhm.
Dr. Byron Bridle, and some of those gents who and so I just want to see more of that. And I'm really glad that you're here. And you've done some speeches, you've been to some rallies, you were behind the truckers. I'm sure you've been watching this inquiry, where there's a bit of a roller coaster ride. Let me just play a quick clip, first clip of one of Trudeau's lies, and then I want to come back and rant about it with you. Which one are we going to do? Let's do, it's going to be,
Yeah.
I think it's this one. I think it's this one. Let's try this one. Here we go.
Sounds good.
I did not call people who were unvaccinated names.
Negative, stirring up of hate and fear and differences.
Farouchement opposés à la vaccination.
Qui sont extrémistes.
Qui croient pas dans la science, qui sont souvent misogynes, souvent racistes.
Once you've used those methods to get elected, it becomes incredibly hard to govern responsibly for all citizens.
But don't think you can get on a plane or a train besides vaccinated people and put them at risk.
This country is a country of openness, of respect, of compassion, of the rights of the individuals, of freedom. Freedom to do what you want with your body. Est-ce qu'on tolère ces gens-là?
Small fringe minority holding unacceptable views.
Once you start, churning up anger, it just feeds on itself.
Those people are putting us all at risk.
Aaron O'Toole talks about, oh yes, we need to unite people, we need to bring people together. He's talking about defending the rights of people who are anti-vax.
Wow. That was a great little clip there, putting all the actual truth out there. I wish that clip would have been played in the inquiry. Maybe they could admit it into some kind of, I don't know, archive or something for the public record. But Anita, first responses to Trudeau just bull-faced lying.
Well, this whole, okay, I don't even know where to start with him. Do you want to start with the Eva Chipiuk stuff, or maybe backtrack a little bit too?
Sure. Yeah, whatever you want to do. Like, I think that, we had so much from him today, and we've learned a lot about the man. So wherever you want to go.
Yeah, I mean, so much of these hearings in general have been wonderful. I mean, it's great because this is all on public record. So this is good that all this was being done. But a lot of it was all about, for me, the frustration. It was all about the tow trucks and this, and then this happened, and the police did this, and then the Ambassador Bridge, and blah blah blah. And all those details are very important because that's what a lawyer does in order to at a proper commission that a justice is going to make a decision on. So yes, we need those facts, but the humanity was gone for me during the hearings because none of this would have even taken place in the bloody first place if Trudeau had just met the truckers, met with the people in the first place. That's what they wanted. These mandates, if this jab was completely safe and nothing was wrong with it, you still have the right to refuse it. You still have the right to not lose your job, your home, your work, whatever. Even if it was as safe as baby aspirin, the fact that it is not a safe, tried and true tested product, that puts it in a whole different category. So the truckers stood up to say no. And it was clear from day one when they left, we are driving to Ottawa until we see the mandates end. And our prime minister took off. He took off. He claimed he had COVID and didn't meet with anybody. And when a man says, or a woman says, I'm going somewhere and I'm not leaving till it's done, that's what happens. That's what happens. So they didn't leave. And he could have ended this nonsense if he said, okay, guys, let's have a meeting. Because they wanted to have a meeting, Tom Marazzo, Tamara Leach, Chris Barber, and their lawyers, Roger Hodgkinson, the whole group of them. You get a group, Trudeau can get his group, get the Theresa Tam and the Howard New, get them all together and get in a room and have a civil discussion. You would have never needed an emergency act, right? Him pulling that emergency act and brutalizing people over jerry cans and things like that, and communities and families, and pushing them out. He gave them no choice but to push them out with brute force in order to end this. And to sit there on the stand today and try to justify that behavior, makes me want to, you know what I mean? It's all, it just makes me want to wring my neck. But you think, how can you sit there and say, you're talking all around it. He's not talking about the facts, right? He's just saying, and there could be children harmed, and we didn't know who had weapons and who was in the trucks. It was pretty clear there were not weapons. It was, I don't know where to even begin with him, because I don't even know how any individual can sit there and lie and miss the point. You've missed the point. He's missed the point. What did you think? Like, what bugged you the most?
Well, even just listening to the guy's voice bugs me tremendously.
Yeah.
It was very difficult today. I didn't even live stream it because I just was like, I just want to watch little bits and then cover it later.
Yeah.
But I ended up watching the whole thing because I couldn't resist. But you really nailed something that I've been trying to harp on a lot, which was that meeting that Byron Bridle, Roger Hodkinson, and Dr. Alexander tried to hold with Health Canada or whoever Trudeau would set. Be like, send your champions, let's have a discussion.
Mhm.
And when the government they didn't even respond to the request, right? And Dr. Byron Bridle is still paid by taxpayer dollars. So he's like, he looks at it as, I was just doing my job.
Mhm.
And I came here to tell the PMO and Health Canada to come do their job. You're public officials. You have a huge amount of people at your doorstep. And I loved how earlier on in the inquiry, there was some of these witnesses for the government that were like, oh, well, if you say there was thousands of people coming to Ottawa, I guess what you're saying is true. I'm like, did you not see, like, the whole country was descending upon Ottawa? You got farmers, truckers, like you had everybody, moms, grandmas baking cookies. Like, you had everybody there. They're
Yeah.
camping out in minus 30 plus weather.
Yeah.
It must be for something important to get a bunch of hardworking Canadians that have already lost everything, that are already going. There must be something really wrong with the government policy if that many people are showing up. And for Trudeau to come out and go, well, I know that everybody was just feeling the bad things from the pandemic and because of COVID. And it's like, no, you didn't sit down and clear up the science. You didn't even show us the science. They keep saying, trust the science. I would really like to see the science. And I would like to see it in front of other scientists that know what they're looking at, that have a different view, and let's have a debate, And they didn't want to have that because why? And how come they and all the other governments didn't want to have it? Because other countries tried to do this, like to approach their government officials and say, let's have scientific debate. Why didn't they have it? Because they're lying, because they're hiding it, because this was never about anything that they told us it was about. And for me to say that, prove me wrong. That's what I would say to the government. I'm going to believe, I'm going to be a conspiracy theorist until you come out and show transparency. And then they'll say, well, the inquiry was transparency. See, we had Prime Minister show up and all of the questions were super softball. And it's like, that's not transparency. Transparency is, let's have scientific discourse and we'll show facts and evidence. And they never did it. And people's lives were destroyed as a result. And now we have international headlines saying that everything they told us to do was wrong. We have scientific journals. We have The Lancet. We have many journals coming out. The masks weren't effective. In fact, they spread the disease more than anything because it's bacteria collecting and you're spreading it around. The lockdowns were an abysmal failure and caused huge disruptions to our supply chains. How many people died in third world countries the moment they started locking things down, which it's shut down the normal flow of the supply chain. Nobody's got a bleeding heart for that, right? And then all the businesses that were lost, they were bitching about the economy losing billions of dollars because of Coots. I'm like, you want to talk about losing billions of dollars? My great-great-grandchildren are going to still be paying off the debt from what was lost to this Canadian economy, not due to COVID, but due to government policy that was not brought about by the actual process of science, and real scientists were censored. And if you don't like that I said real scientists, how about we just say other very well-renowned scientists that disagreed? Wouldn't you want to know what they have to say? Wouldn't you want to know what Dr. Peter McCullough has to say, or Dr. Byron Bridle, or some of these experts? Like, Dr. Fauci hasn't treated a patient in 40 years or more. Yeah. Bill Gates is not a doctor. The head Tedros of the World Health Organization is not a doctor.
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
who are we really listening to? I want to listen to real scientists, you know what I mean? But here I am going on a rant. What do you think, Anita?
Well, no, actually, you just reminded me that all throughout the hearing, those people that, were so many government officials would go, and people in Ottawa just wanted to get back to their lives and go to work. And what are you talking about? You were okay to shut down and completely decimate their business for 2 years, and that was okay. How do you sit there and not even recognize your own hypocrisy? And when they talk about the Coots blockade and the Ambassador Bridge, and that you're disrupting the flow, you were perfectly fine to shut that border down for 2 years for no good reason. For no good reason. And you're sitting there going, and people just wanted their lives back, and all the horn honking, horn honking, that's the least of your problems. There are people that took this goddamn thing and can't walk, and you're talking about a horn. That's you deserve that horn, is what you do. And the hypocrisy of it. Oh, it's affecting the economy. You affected the economy, Mr. Trudeau, by printing money for the CERB that you didn't have, by locking down everyone. And I don't think they made mistakes. This was all deliberate. I don't think they were like, oh, we better shut down because we don't know what to do. They bloody knew what to do. They did this on purpose. They did this on purpose for whatever transfer of wealth they were interested in doing. I don't know what the hell they thought they were doing, right? I mean, I don't know, but the bogus argument of them going, people in Ottawa just wanted to get back to their lives and get back to work. People in Ottawa, if you had a bloody sandwich shop, you were rolling in dough, literally, because you had all the people wanting sandwiches, coffee, restaurants, food. I can't imagine what it did for the economy. It must have been fantastic, the Convoy, right?
It did. There's a lot of business owners that have come out and said, I made more money. I just went from making very little money because it was trickling in, right? Because of all the people weren't out and about as much. Everybody was paranoid, right? And then the Convoy comes with all these people coming in from all over the country. They're making bank right there.
Yeah.
And so you sit there and you go, yeah, there was things affected, but what about these other protests? What about the protests right before the pandemic? Does anybody remember where we had armed patrols locking down CN rail and lighting pallets on fire to block the rail from moving? So that shut down our production, and it had full support by the media, full support by the government. They even got assisted security from the RCMP to support that protest. Now, I'm not here to talk about the merits of the protest. That's not what this is. This is about a double standard. We also had the big George Floyd protests right in the height of the alpha variant or alpha strain of the pandemic. We had what's called the Summer of Love that kicked off all over the world. Meanwhile, like a day before that kicked off, they're like, don't even look at anybody in your household. That's how dangerous this virus is. They're pulling people out of their homes in Quebec for having too many people over for dinner. Yet we can totally have thousands of people. Trudeau can come out, take a knee, do the whole song and dance. That was okay. They burnt churches down to the ground here. There was vandalism. They were tearing down statues and actually damaging property. Again, it's just stuff that's illegal. And you go, what's with the double standard? And then as for the transfer of wealth, I'm really, really glad you honed in on that, because that connects with how we opened this. If people think about this for a second, we were told, small business owners, and I was a small business owner. I lost my business. I know so many other people that did. They owned restaurants and small little fish and tackle shops and things like that. These are places that can only fit like 10, 15, maybe 20 people in them at a time anyways. They're small businesses, right? And they all get shut down and are told, you need to shut down so that we can stop the spread of the virus. So this put out of business generational businesses, okay, all over the country and the world. Well, guess what? Walmart didn't have to shut down. Did Target have to shut down? Did Home Depot have to shut down? Did Canadian? None of them had to shut down. So what is that, if not a funneling of commerce away from middle-class small business owners, which were destroyed, into multinational corporations that have no allegiance to this country or to our economy? They're global corporations. They don't give a shit. They're also the same investing firms like BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, these investing firms. Those guys have investments in those big corporations that were allowed to stay open, where thousands of people are going through Costco every hour, right?
Yeah.
And everybody's pretending they're safe with a cloth on their face.
Yeah.
And then yet all these other guys get shut down. So these big investing firms have stakes in Costco and stakes in Walmart and stakes. They also have stake in the media. They also have stake in Pfizer. They also have stake in Moderna and Glaxo. You know, so you sit back and you go, this was literally the largest transfer of wealth in human history. We got robbed. Now we're in a recession. And Chrystia Freeland, who was smirking all day the other day, has the gall to come out and say, oh, our economy's bouncing back. It's going to be doing great. It's like, are you kidding me? Look at the dollar. Look at the gas prices. Look at the price of food. When that price is going up, that means it's inflation. That's a really bad, that means our currency has been devalued. That's just the start of the ramifications economically that we're going to feel, not due to COVID, not due to Ukraine and Russia, but due to the government policies that they enacted largely. And we can't even get them to, we can't even get any kind of official recognition on that absolutely indisputable fact. It's amazing.
It is an indisputable fact. I mean, they sat there and ruined the country. The country has been going down. I can't even count how many reasons why. The supply chain, the closing of the borders, the mandating the truckers and everybody, you know, what they're doing between, you know, cross-country supply is ruining the country. They drove up inflation. I don't know what the hell they're doing with the gas prices. In my lifetime, they've never sorted out. We have one bloody refinery here in British Columbia. Why don't you just build another one or build that? You bought a bloody pipeline. It's sitting here doing nothing. We've got a twinned pipeline, Mr. Trudeau, that you bought with our tax money. Why is it sitting dormant? Build that bloody pipeline. And all these people run on this sort of, it's all just policy. It's all just government policy and virtue signaling. You know, that your gas, you know, we've got to reduce our emissions and whatever. Do you? What are you going to, what's the alternative? Wind? You know, coal? What is, you giving me no alternative other than an electric car, which is also terrible for the environment also, if you didn't know. But okay, that aside, then Chrystia Freeland yesterday, just, we had to use these tools and get to, you know, the way she talks, and she's always doing this to her face or whatever, and she talked a lot about Ukraine. Well, you're sending all this bloody money over there. Do you really care about, is this really humanitarian? No. You know why? Because when COVID started, I think there was a war in Yemen. There was a war in Ethiopia. I never saw anybody change their Facebook page to say, I support Ethiopia. I support Yemen. But boy, oh boy, that friggin' Ukraine went nuts, right? Which, support it if you want. But my God, how much of our money needs to go there? How much US money needs to go there? It's not because of Putin our gas prices high. It's our own damn fault. These people running this country are crooks and clowns. And if you want to know what a criminal looks like, you Google Prime Minister of Canada, Deputy Prime Minister. That's what a criminal looks like. A criminal doesn't look like a ne'er-do-well with a hoodie and a bunch of tattoos. Those are the good guys. Those are what the truckers look like. You know, a salt of the earth person that goes to work and pays the bills and tries to raise their family and wants the best for their family, but we are not interested in playing Russian roulette with our body. I don't know what the hell is going to happen to me if I take one of those, so I'd rather not take one of those. And in 3 years, I don't mask, I run around, I do whatever the hell I want to do. I've never even been sick. So for those people to blame this tiny protest, well, no, it wasn't a tiny protest, but the length of time was very small compared to the length of time you closed everything down for COVID. You decimated businesses. I work with that guy who made $10 because he sold a pamphlet. And that was when COVID first started. He just totally ruined his business, right? And you did that to all the yoga studios, the fitness studios, the restaurants, the shoe shops, the hairdressers, the whatever, with this bullshit COVID. You got a virus that was created in a lab in a bloody first place, and that they had the cure for all along. You're sitting here, you proud of yourself when you see 5-year-olds masked? Teresa Tam, are you proud of yourself when you see people dancing or girls going to dance classes with a mask on, or children or old ladies scared? Are you proud that you scared everybody when you had the cure in the first place, namely the drugs that I mentioned before, and one drug that you can never mention because everybody thinks it's a horse medication, which there was an absolute campaign, media campaign to run stories on that. Everybody knows. Well, I hope people know that, but we deliberately made you think it was a horse medication, to which I chirped up at work. It was just told Anita, shut up. But, so you sit there, Chrystia Freeland, our prime minister, and try to gaslight us about this protest and how it was affecting the economy. But you had no problem decimating the economy for 2 years. And they bloody opened the bloody Ambassador Bridge too. And all these little technical details. There was a lawyer there, Sujit Chowdhury, who some people nickname him the Penguin, right? Because he looks a bit like the Penguin from Batman. I really like him and his intensity. And he brought up a really good thing at the hearing today, that there was some email that he showed that they needed to show. I forgot what it was exactly as to what propelled them to put the emergent. It was like it was dated on a certain day, so it was kind of time specific too. It was completely redacted. It was all black. He goes, I would like to read this. We were promised that we were going to get this. This is in the documentation. The government has given this to us redacted. And there's Trudeau sitting there going, yeah. And then when Sujit Chaudhry said, can you make a ruling as to unredact that? Can you make a ruling? And then the government lawyer chirped up and go, no, we can't do that. There's always some reason. Just when the questioning was getting good, there's some government lawyer chirps up and goes, no, that's a solicitor-client privilege, or what. They chirp up and object. And it wastes time, and on we go. And I think the only person, I mean, we could talk about Brendan Miller too. What did you think of Brendan Miller, what he did to Chrystia Freeland, what the kind of this mic drop moment that he had about the whole Confederate flag thing? That there is some rumblings, we don't know yet, that the person that was actually holding the flag was part of that enterprise group, and he was hired by the Liberals to carry that flag. I'm alleging. Oh, I'm not alleging, I'm just saying that there were rumblings about that were brought up in court.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we called it Miller time every time Brendan Miller would come up. And he just did a good job of just getting these people's faces. His demeanor was perfect. The demeanor that he had when he was questioning these people was just brilliant. I love that he was controversial. I love that he just started going out and going, yeah, guys, I think we know who the person was the flag. I think it's these guys. I think they're connected to Toronto Star. I think they're liberal paid shills or whatever. Oh my God, there's a video going around of him confronting other journalists they're confronting him. And he just spends a good 15 minutes sort of breaking it down. I'd love to see more on that. I hope he's got all that data. I'm sure he does. But it doesn't surprise me. I mean, just think about it. We had the counter protesters come in. Remember those counter protesters? And there was like 8 or 9 communist flags in that group. And there's videos all over going around. I mean, I was sitting there going, why don't you guys bring that up when they bring up the Nazi flag, where there was only one and it was photographed by that one photographer that's questionable? Out of all the rest were just Canadian flags or F Trudeau flags. Totally, you can say, they sold out of Amazon pretty quick on those, or Quebec flags. There was none of that other stuff going on. There was people of all backgrounds there. Like when you see the footage from the ground, and there's been many documentaries made. I made a little documentary on it of what I covered, and Dan Dix has done stuff. People have done lots on this. The footage the media shows is nothing like what you see when you were really there. And you go, well, we can't, you're going to demonize one Nazi flag and one Confederate flag. And if I were to speak to American friends, they would say, well, yeah, there's bad things with the Confederate flag, but don't forget Dukes of Hazzard was the Confederate flag. There was a totally different perspective in America, right? Like it wasn't all like what they're saying, but they need to find a way to demonize people and put them in a category. And if they can get the public, it's just optics. If they can get the public to think these people align with Nazi ideology, these people are far-right extremists, these people are anti-vaxxers and anti-science, and they're dirty people from Alberta, or like, that's the way the media talks. And you're like, no, what you said about these are the salt of the earth people. I was born in Alberta, raised in Saskatchewan and Ontario. These are the best people you're going to meet, hardworking. They actually work for their money. And if they're getting up in arms, these people don't go to protests. They work every day. Okay. If they're up in arms and bringing in the farmers, something's wrong, and you better listen to what they have to say. And the fact that all they did was smear them with this flag nonsense and then make that the entire feature of the rest of the narrative about about the truckers, it tells you everything you need to know. It tells you the government was petrified by this, and not for their lives. They're just petrified that their lies are going to be exposed. And
Yeah.
so, here we are. We've had the inquiry. They didn't admit to any of that. But I would have loved to see some of the footage played of the counter protest groups and
Yeah.
some of the actual footage of the police violence. We should have seen way more of that, because they kept talking about potential for violence, potential threats. We got to do this for potentials. The Emergencies Act is not for potentials. It's for legit war stuff. Okay.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so they don't have a case.
Especially
in my
when there
opinion.
was no violence anyway. None of the truckers, they knew they had a code of conduct, because I interviewed a couple of them, and they were on their best behavior because they knew they'd be completely and totally scrutinized. And so when I heard rumors of this Confederate flag and Nazi flags, and Trudeau even said that in the House of Commons, he's like, you don't need to be affronted by the inherent violence of a swastika. And if you're the person that put the swastika there in the first place for the Confederate flag, you need to bloody well answer for it. And also in the hearings, David Miller was questioning Brendan Miller questioning David Vigneault, director of CSIS. And he's like, who is this man with the Nazi flag that there's all this hoo-ha about? And David Vigneault is just like, I don't know, I haven't investigated. Why have you not investigated who that person is? Like, at least look into it. Do you have any interest in either Vigneault thinks that it was a trucker, or Vigneault knows they planted it? Well, which one is it? Why are you not going to answer for it? You know, and so yeah. And the other thing about the guy holding the flag, when I didn't know who he was, and I didn't know anything about this, that it could have been a Liberal plant. Well, I heard it, but I never really knew. And then when I looked at the guy's picture, I'm like, something about his skin looked so clean. I don't know what it was. He didn't look like he looked like a guy playing dress up. That was just my instinct. And that was just my instinct. And I don't think I'm wrong about that, you know. But yes, the hypocrisy of the hearings, and to hear our leaders just pretty much lie, just sit there and just say, nope, this didn't happen. And to say stuff about the GoFundMe website. It has now been proven by Larry Brock. He's a conservative MP. He was questioning the GoFundMe CEO or something like that, and she said, yeah, pretty much 89% of the funding came from Canadians, and the other 11% came from either the U.S. or other countries. And all this stuff that we were running in the media about the Russians paid for this. The Russians paid for this. You think the Russians care if somebody from Red Deer goes to Ottawa? Really? Really? That's what you think, right? And for them to, they didn't really bring that up enough or go hard on that. Just the funding came from Canadians. Who was lining the overpasses? Canadians. Who got in their cars and drove? Canadians. We don't want mandates. So what are you going to do about it, Trudeau? Well, I'm going to stomp you out and pretend that, oh, yeah, stomp you out and deny that I even called you names. And after he said that to Eva Chipiuk was the one that brought the humanity in it for me. Because when she started to tell the stories of people the emotion, because I moved from the heart. So when she was sort of speaking from the heart and being tough on him, I really liked that moment. And he said, I never called them names. And then after he said that, he knew he just bit it. He knew he put his foot in it because he was frazzled after that. He was incoherent. You could tell he was getting tired. You could tell he knew he blew it. And it'll be very interesting to see if on the 6 o'clock news tonight, whether they put that clip in or not. You know, how they will cover this protest or this hearing will again shape your neighbor's opinion. So for people who don't know anything and they just go to work and go home and watch the news, thank you very much, news, for pulling the wool over everybody's eyes and not giving them the truth. And that's what they do. And I'm curious to see how this will be covered in the media. Every time we look at a story, it's always like, oh God, they make the convoy people look like absolute heathens, and they make the liberal government look like godlike or something. And it's so it's like North Korean television to me. You might as well be dressed in that little that little outfit or whatever, because that's what it's like. State-run television. And now what's going to happen? Like, what did you think of the justice, Paul Rouleau? Like, do you think that he was fair in how he handled things, or did you feel
No.
any bias from him?
I feel biased from all of them. I'm so
Oh,
disgruntled. I don't have a time of day for any of these people. Like, if you're not in the beginning, he seemed fair. The commissioner, he seemed fair
mm-hmm,
in the beginning. Once the
mm-hmm,
government officials started to hit the stand, it was like, I don't know. It just the whole scuffle about the redactions, didn't get around to it. Oh, sorry, I'll get to it. Dragging his feet, just red tape, and then always butting in. Like, it was always like the government lawyers and the commissioner against the convoy lawyers.
yeah,
I'm just saying there was a change when the government officials came on board,
oh
and
yeah,
either it's a bias or he had a talking to, or I don't know, but um, what really, really, really pissed me off was when Mendocino and that other guy, I can never remember his name,
mm-hmm,
they lied about that text exchange, and they tried to really
mm,
downplay about the tanks, bringing the tank on the
oh
street or whatever.
yeah,
And they're like,
mm-hmm,
oh, it was just a joke. And you're like,
mm-hmm,
you brought the national defense minister on the stand, and she's like, oh, that was in jest. And you're like, you're all just together on this. What do you mean it's in jest? Let's just take that scenario, because I don't think it was in jest. I think they've
mm-hmm,
been thinking about some kind of a more strong arm military approach to the pandemic from the beginning, and there's many hints to that. I'd love to
mm-hmm,
have some of the other lawyers on to break some of that down, but
mm-hmm,
um, I don't think it was a joke. But let's say we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Okay, it was a joke. Are you telling me these are the two MPs that are responsible for disarming Canadians' gun rights right now, right?
mm-hmm,
They're the
mm-hmm,
ones, and they're now getting rid of bolt action, shotguns, handgun. They're just going. It's like Venezuela. They're going for the gun
mm-hmm,
grabs. This is the blueprint. And you go, all right. So you guys are trying to get rid of guns, take away guns from legal gun owners that aren't out there engaging in violence, um, which is just going to funnel all the weapons into the black market. And criminals don't obey laws. I don't know if you've ever heard. It's just this weird thing that they do. So it doesn't matter what you do. You're just
They don't
punishing good
obey laws
people.
that they run countries. No,
Yeah,
no.
and there you go.
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah, yeah.
And so, anyways, I'm going off, but the idea is that if you were joking about that, we're getting an insight into the disposition of these people, about how heartless they are, that they're joking. There's children out there. There's grandmothers out there. There's
Mhm.
moms and dads out there. There was Quebecers hugging Albertans. That's history. That's like a heritage moment, right? Come on. There was First Nations there. There was
Yeah,
Sikh truck drivers there.
yeah,
Everybody was there. All of my friends were there. Everybody was there. They're all good people. They come from every Lebanese background,
mhm,
everybody. And you're like, you're trying to make this something that it's not. It's about the mandates. It's about what the
yeah,
government's doing.
yeah,
And they go, oh, well, how many tanks do we need? And if it's a joke, that's even almost worse for me. Like, but if
yeah,
they were being real, that gives us some alarm bells as to whether we should trust these people, which I don't trust these people as far as I can throw them. But the Canadian public need to see these kinds of things.
yeah,
And what was redacted? So if that's what wasn't redacted, what the hell was redacted? I want to
yeah.
see that shit.
Yes, exactly. I mean, and it's like the convoy lawyers, the Freedom Corp lawyers can't get ahead. They can't get a break. They're being interrupted. The commissioner supports them and stuff like that. They run out of time. Freeland meanders on. Like, I did a video about this yesterday, and I said to her, with her ridiculous word salad eating up time, and then all of a sudden the lawyers run out of time. Now you bloody run out of time, and you can't get to any of these answers. But there were, when you brought up Mendocino and stuff, there were like nasty text messages being exchanged on many different levels, of even when I can't remember who, but it would be people being like, oh, they're in, oh yeah, we can help, oh yeah, we can, sway this opinion, and we can do this and we can do that. The government and the media, um you know were in bed together. absolutely in bed together, driving this narrative. And that's why you have so many people who are just clueless, like actually clueless to what went on. It's all the media's fault. But they played dirty. I think what we can see is that our government, those guys, Mendocino, Freeland, David Vigneault, Katie Telford, and her two cronies sitting beside her, they're all whispering. They play dirty. They play dirty and then cover it up with complete impunity because they're untouchable. What's going to touch them? Look at all the nonsense that Bonnie Henry does here. Can't show us any rates of transmission, but she'll shut down your business. She'll put up some bullshit modeling numbers, which I used to put on BC One, and it's like, what the hell is this? You closed a certain business, and so you need to show me rates of transmission, and then we need to have a public hearing. That's when a business shuts down. It doesn't shut down because you wave your wand and say so, Missy. But nobody. No, she had this authority to do so. So the real criminals are these people that did all this stuff to you. And do you remember how the Ottawa or the police would act? If you're in town in Ottawa, they'd be like, where are you from? Do you live here? Almost like you don't have the right to be here. Whoa. I don't have the right to be in Ottawa. I can be wherever I bloody well want to be. I'm a Canadian citizen or resident, right? But they were going around bullying people. And remember what they did to that one guy who had a sandwich shop? The police were acting like thugs. Some police were really nice, though, because some were on their side or whatever. But, I mean, you brought up earlier that the government is fearful. And I never thought about that. My brother says that they're scared, they're scared, they're scared. I mean, I guess they're scared to sit down and talk and be transparent, but at the end of the day, they've got all the is it fair to say they have all the power? They kind of just do what they want, and we have to eat it. So that to this very day, if you're not vaccinated and your mom is in a care home, certain care homes, most of them, you can't go in. So they're still keeping families apart because of this mandate. The news says some crap about RSV. I just saw a bogus CBC story on Sick Kids Hospital. It was absolutely done with file footage. That's what anybody could put that story together without even going out and shooting anything. But, I'm not saying they did shoot some things, but it was just put together with this. Kids are waiting in hospital. Kids have RSV. Better put your mask on. So I think they're testing us again. Are you going to put that on again and walk around compliant? Oh, you're an ass if you don't wear that. No, mommy isn't playing this game anymore. I'm done. Mommy don't want to play this. I don't ever want to put that on my face again. But I took my mom out to the eye doctor today and stuff, and they are mask. It's a mask palooza. Like they're all into it again, and it's because the media just has to say one thing and we eat it up. Not us, but the majority. But I know that you're very disgusted with all the people like the commissioner and that side. And I guess the one good thing is that at least all of this has been brought as much as it could be, even though so much of it was redacted, into the public eye, so that history will show. If you 10 years from now go look at Trudeau testifying, you're going to draw your own conclusions. You'll know what to think. But that's 10 years. What do we do now? Right? Like, they've shown their colors.
Oh, I sometimes get a feedback for some reason right when I cut you off. I don't know if it's the headphones or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
As long as you don't hear it, we're good. You were bringing so much good stuff. And I agree. I agree the positive thing. This is what I've been trying to say, because I got a lot of people that message me, and I feel these people that are just distraught over this. Their despair is setting in. They're getting into the black pill mentality of like, it's hopeless. There's nothing we can do. See, nothing happened. There's no justice. Nobody's getting arrested. And I was trying to keep them on course by saying, the positive here is that this was our inquiry. I know they rigged it. I know they got these guys in. I know they gave softball on some of these, but we did get lots of good nuggets. We did get a lot documented. We caught them contradicting themselves. We actually, with this inquiry, when you go through all these testimonies, I would say so much, maybe even the vast majority of the narrative the media spun and the government spun about the truckers has been debunked, right? Like a lot of those points that were totally just, taken apart by the actual testimony. And they started playing the game of pass the buck, which I know it doesn't go anywhere on the legal front, but for people to see that happen is going to help them understand this problem with our government here is not just about COVID and lockdowns and mandates. This is a problem with the entire system, with this entire part. There's something bigger going on. And in order to move the needle on awareness, people need to be able to see that. So public awareness, definitely. Will there be any kind of precedent set with this moving forward that we can use in other cases that could get into some kind of real legal justice? Hopefully. The other thing I tell people is think about this as well. We tend to think as Canadians only, and we should, but remember, this is affecting people all over the world, and there's people fighting back all over the world. So there's some successes coming out of different states in the US when it comes to this and holding people to account and expose. Like you got, I bet you Fauci is not going to be lasting much longer, and they're going right after him right now. In Australia, there's good movement happening. In the Netherlands, look at Brazil, for crying out loud. There's
and
so
in
many.
England,
Yeah, England. So what I'm saying is humanity is fighting this together. This was a global operation, whatever it was and however people want to characterize it. This affront to freedom, bodily autonomy, your rights, your charters, the Nuremberg Code, all that stuff. This was a global assault on that. They're trying to change the order of the world. That's why they call it a new world order. And they say it all the time. They just renamed it the Great Reset recently. It's just different branding. But they want to get people used to having a different kind of relationship with their government. And they're going to try to do the softball approach as much as possible. Like Trudeau with his little rainbows and fairy dust when he comes out. Oh, guys, we're just here we care about everybody. And Freeland, don't fall for that mask. Those are usually some of the worst sociopaths out there, the ones that are the best at pretending they're something they're not, because you can see by their actions that they're not that, right? But people are watching this happen. So I think the net positive of this whole rant is that the inquiry can be used to help continue to wake people up. But we are up against this media machine. And that's where people like me and you come in, where we're here to help create better media that's more real. It's more raw. It's more off the cuff. There's no editing. It's just conversations, presenting facts and evidence, and then always letting the people make up their own mind. And that's what we need to do moving forward, is get better with the messaging, because that's what these people are experts in. They are experts at crafting social narratives, and media departments. And I'm not sure if you know about this, I'm sure you might, but my research into it is that a lot of these big media companies, they employ psychologists. They have the knowledge of how to present stories and write headlines and influence through emotion and create a buzz about something and make something go viral. But they also know how to spin the story. So in a way, we have to use a chapter out of that, but to tell the truth, meaning not a chapter out of propaganda and lying to people and manipulating them, but a chapter out of presentation, right? That's why I work as hard as I can on quality streams and quality videos, because if we present it well, people will watch it. People will listen, right? If it's some guy screaming in the backyard and he can't even hear the wind is going on, maybe it won't carry as far. But if we can get better with the way we present this, also, I think the people that have been awake to this, we're getting better with our arguments. We're learning more. We're becoming more conversant with the facts. And that is having an effect, because now when you're at Christmas dinner or whatever's coming up, you're almost bulletproof. You have so many sources at your disposal to tell people and go, I know the media told you that, but here's the source material. And you can either believe Global News or CBC News, or you can believe the actual source material, the data, the science. And you could really trust the science. Like, if you really want to trust the science, here it is. And we've got so much more of that ammo now than we did in 2020 or even 2021. And I think these inquiries are part of that. Even though I know everybody's pissed off, I'm pissed off. I wish we could just, have a tribunal and arrest these people and kick them out. But we're not there yet. What do you think, Anita? Do you think we're getting closer to some kind of a bigger exposure as a result of this inquiry? Or do you think this is just them going to wrap it all up and walk off into the sunset and nobody's going to have any justice come their way? What do you think?
Oh, I think you were right that you brought up a good point that at least we could see evidence that this emergency act was completely unnecessary. And that case has been made. But it is up to whoever decides as to how they're going to rule on that. And things so far do not work in our favor because our institutions are completely corrupt. So whatever the outcome is, whatever the ruling is, if Rouleau comes back and says, it was completely unjustified, the Emergency Act, and it should have never happened, that's a big win. That's a big win. But I bet you the media will be pretty quiet on it. They'll do maybe make it the third story or something like that. They won't like, ham it up. They'll be quiet on it because they are Trudeau's bitches, right? They work for him, right? They are his, I, some people have called them prostitutes, but they work for him. So they'll just do like a soft headline on it. But that ruling would mean a lot. If Rouleau comes out and he says, um, no, it was completely justified, well, at least it's all on public record, and we can look back and we can see what all the lawyers said and all the hard work and all that they proved will be there. The evidence is there. So at least we have that. Yes, it is frustrating because these people should just be um, arrested. You don't make someone take something and then all of a sudden they can't walk and they have lost their livelihood and they have no recourse, right? You don't do that to people. So that is wrong. Actually, on a side note, my cousin, he's 24 years old, he took a Pfizer jab and then he became paralyzed. He didn't know what the hell happened, right? He became paralyzed. He was in the hospital for 3 months and all he could do was move his hands. And then now he walks, like he's fine now. But look at the trauma that he went through because of that shot. So you don't mandate something like this ever. So it's public opinion. It's a matter of public opinion. Those that are awake will know in their hearts what is right, and we'll never lose that. And those that are asleep, well, they'll feel vindicated. Maybe they'll feel fine. Whatever the ruling happens to be, we just have to let the chips fall where they may. But we keep speaking up and we keep talking. And you did bring out a good point also about having a quality program. In a way, it's a good and a bad thing because you can just grab your phone and just do something on your phone, and then you have a voice and you can upload that in a way that's great. The problem is people are very used to the man behind the desk or the woman, the anchor, with the lights and the cameras and all the whiz bang telling you this is the story. I'm here to tell you they oftentimes don't know the story, and once they do know, they are refusing to tell you. So believe that because that really, really happened in the newsroom. They debunk things that are true, that are based in true because they didn't want to report it. So don't trust that person. That person is not out to tell you the truth. They're not out to be transparent because they're hamstrung and they can't be. But more and more people are not watching TV, they're canceling their cable, and more people are going to all these alternative news sources. And that's where we're getting our sort of unabashed conversations from. And it's a good thing. And we're just going to get better and better and start our own networks, right? And all that kind of thing. But I do get very jealous of the money that they get. If somebody gave me CBC money, I would put it to good use. I would start a station. I wouldn't even need a third of them. I'd need nothing of it to start my own little thing. And I would have good news. I would do good news programming because that's what I know how to do, right? Those jerks get all this government money to waste it, to not report for Canadians anymore. And Global and CTV and CBC, I do resent them, and also radio. I'm starting to resent them too, because they've got it all and they can reach people by just but through the airwaves, whereas people like us, we share, we stream, we claw, we fight to get the numbers, and then the government still wants to push you down, with bill C11 or whatever they want to do and all the bills that they're passing to make it impossible for us. But we will find a way. We'll keep going. But I almost resent, you got a network and that's how you're using your network. You got the opportunity to do a national newscast, and that is what you're doing. you're wasting it, and you're letting down your countrymen. That's what I hate about the media nowadays. And we have to work so hard to come up. People like us who are starting out and figuring out, okay, how does the internet world work? How do I do that? I don't even know what I'm doing, right? But I almost resent that. I resent the money that they get, you know? And I miss the luxury of working out of a control room with fancy cameras and perfect lighting and great microphones and great software. And now I'm futzing around with StreamYard at home, like learning how to do it. But that's our growing pain. And we will get there because people obviously believe in you and they believe in us. And if we had the resources, man, the things we could do. So things are changing, and a lot of people are more aware. They're more aware, and a lot of even normal people are just like, I don't watch the news. I don't watch the news anymore. So maybe we're sort of on the cusp of something exciting. I hope. I hope. Though we might be too tired when it comes around.
Yeah, I know. Well,
You know?
I'm never giving up, and I hope you aren't. And everybody listening out there right now, just do not give up. Whatever you have to
Mhm.
do. I don't. I posted this brilliant meme. It's one of the old warrior quotes, and it's like, I don't know how I'm going to win, but I just know I'm not going to lose. And
Yeah.
that's a good place to be right now because we don't know what's going to be happening over the short term or the long term right now. But I do see the awareness of this growing. I think that if we had, I'm not saying, I don't think maybe having another trucker convoy is a good idea. I just think that if there was another one now, it would be way bigger than it was in the beginning. Like
Mhm.
in terms of how many more people have woken up since that happened. I
Mm.
know people that woke up because of the fact that he did the Emergencies Act. So
Mm.
in a way, you could look at it from sort of like a jujitsu angle where you just redirect their own attack back into them, where he went and attacked. And actually, that's what I was going to answer earlier. We were like, I don't know if they're afraid. They're very arrogant. There's nothing that can stop them. The
Mhm.
way I know that they were afraid of that, not that they were. I don't think they had. It was just about fear for their lives. I think they were afraid of the fact they were losing control of the narrative. They were losing control of the optics, and it was really bad optics on the government for them to have this incredible movement that ended up inspiring the whole world.
Yeah.
Like there was MPs in the European Parliament talking about it. There was, Joe Rogan was talking about it. Like everybody was
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about it. Everybody
Yeah.
loves the truckers. Everybody from every other country that emails me, there's like,
Yeah.
it's non-negotiable. The Canadian truckers are forever immortalized as heroes for the world. The Netherlands farmers were carrying
Yeah.
Canadian flags. The Brazilians are Canadian flags. New Yorkers, when they were protesting their little dirtbag over there, Cuomo, they
Yeah.
went to the Canadian embassy with Canadian flags to show solidarity with the truckers. So we lit up something in the world. I don't even know if this event could be reproduced. I think it was so
No.
organic. It was meant to happen. It's a moment in history, and um, it will never be forgotten. And I'm never, ever, ever going to let Canadians forget about it. And I'm
Yeah.
not going to let the media lie and slander. And I'm not going to let Trudeau and these people get away with lying and slandering good people. And I'm motivated to create that media that you're talking about in Canada, which is alternative. It's free. It's accessible. Even if people don't agree with all of my opinions or everything I do, I always leave people the space to think for themselves. I show them the sources and they can think for themselves. And that's how the media should be. And so we need to do that. I think it's a net positive, and I think more Canadians are more awake than ever. We have a long way to go, but if we can do justice to what the lawyers have produced, these amazing Convoy lawyers, and shout out to you guys, Eva and Brendan and Tom and all the guys and Tamara and all the people that took arrows for
Yeah.
patriotism. Jeremy McKenzie just got let out on bail. He's been in jail for 2 months. Pat King, all these people, political prisoners. You took arrows, but it's going to pay off because that is also waking people up. And so we have to do justice to the truth for these people that have sacrificed so much.
Yes.
And all Canadians and all people everywhere that have sacrificed as a result. And if we can keep that truth going out, it's going to do its own thing, and it's going to take all these guys down, because that's what the truth is. It's undeniable. You can hide it only for a certain period of time, but eventually it comes out and it's just an unstoppable force. And that's what I envision. That's what I pray for every day.
Yeah.
That's what I work for every day. And for anybody feeling down and out, just remember, it was always small groups of people against the many throughout history that rose up and won freedom for everybody else. It was never the masses. So if you feel outnumbered, you're in good
Yes.
company. If you're in the majority and you're just going along, history doesn't look good on that. All right. And now we're in a new phase where I think we're gaining more people to our side every single day. So do not give up hope. And if you know people out there that are feeling down in that way, or feeling depressed, or even borderline suicidal, I was really glad that somebody, I'm trying to remember who it was, that brought up the suicides, about how it was just before the truckers kicked off, the suicide rate was skyrocketing, the depression rate, all of that. And
Mhm.
truckers came and it brought hope to people. Eva was reading out those stories, and you just think how anybody can demonize that as being evil. Those are the people who are the liars. Those are the people that don't understand. And so let's keep that, even though we don't have the truckers and even though we don't have any full justice for this yet, keep the spirit of the trucker convoy alive, which was what? It was love and connection and unity and patriotism and freedom. It was about freedom. So keep that spirit alive, and it'll save you, and that it'll pull people out of the depths of despair that I know they're in. And I think we all need it. We got to stick together, and we can win this fight. We just got to stay consistent with it. We got to stay at it.
They've spoken like a martial arts guy. Because you got that. You got that. That is the winning spirit. That is the don't give up spirit, because martial arts is also your mind and body too, and focus. And I can tell by you saying that you did not unfocus. I mean, I get up and there's days where it's hard because my best friend kind of doesn't get it. Like, she kind of gets it. She's trying, but she doesn't understand. She doesn't go on Rumble. She doesn't watch these podcasts. She goes home and watches Netflix. So she doesn't quite get it. She has 3 jabs. She's not, and she's got an AstraZeneca, a Pfizer, and a Moderna. She's got all 3 of them. She just went there and sat there and let them put anything in her. She's like, "I don't know." And she just did it. And it's only now that I'm like, "Girl, listen, like, this is not a safe thing. You do understand the spike protein, what this is doing in your body, whatever." But you don't want to scare her. Just leave her. But and so it's hard, because when then I talk about it with her, it's like, well, there's crazy Anita talking about, so you can't even talk too much with certain people too. So the battle is hard, but I think your passion is seeping onto me, because it is hard sometimes, and you feel like just going, you can't fight this some days, even though I'm such a fighter. But we have to, because if it's not us, then who will do it? It's us. We are the ones. We keep going forward. There are so many stories to tell. That's our job. That's what we do. That's what I do. That is something I love doing. So thank you for that inspiration. I needed to hear that too, because it gets really hard, right? A little bit.
Oh, hey, I'm trying to inspire myself too. Like, and I do. And like, I told myself, I'm not going to surrender this. I put everything I could behind this because I knew it was the right thing. And usually doing the right thing, you got to go against the grain. It's just the way it goes.
We're
And so,
swimming upstream.
yeah.
Yeah.
But guess what? We're swimming upstream. That means we're growing new muscles. We're becoming stronger. We're the strong ones. You're being sharpened. You're being turned into a katana blade right now. Do you know how they make katana blades, the katana swords?
No.
They bend it thousands of times. They smash it they put it in fire and they beat it and they temper it. And it's honed perfectly so that it's sharp and flexible and durable. It's this incredible process. But I love that example because that katana blade needs to be hammered. It needs to be put in the fire. It needs to go through the grind, literally, in order to become this. Well, it's a weapon of war, but it's an amazing piece of technology. And it's a good metaphor because we could talk about it as like the sword of truth, right? Your mind is like that blade. Your spirit is like that blade. And that's what people need. They need to know this is not for nothing. This is not for nothing. There's a bigger thing happening here. And
Yeah.
remember, it's all over the world. And there's there's a lot of stuff that comes out of the warrior tradition that I bring into my work, which is that it's always been sort of like the one against the many or the few against the many in terms of, think of all the people that changed science or changed history or won past revolutions like this. It was always the small committed group that never gave up. And so if we can emulate that we're doing this at home in our pajamas, you know, for the most part. We're just
Yeah,
tweeting,
yeah, yeah.
just sharing it. We're in a digital space
I'm
now.
not
So
wearing pants. No, I'm joking. No,
there you go. Yeah, it's
no.
like we're at home, just, you know,
Yeah,
this is a different environment, but it's a psychological war, it's a spiritual war, it's an
yeah.
emotional war. This has been grueling. It I feel it too. But
It is grueling. Yeah.
it is. But if we come together and we keep having these talks and we keep doing the work, if we don't quit, who's to say we can't win, and not just win, but maybe we could set precedent in this world moving forward, that we could create a world for our children that it was out of reach before. It was beyond our imagination, you know?
Yes.
Because there are solutions to the problems we face. There are brilliant people that know how to solve the economy problems, that know how to fix the body from, I'm sure we're going to find the solution to the people that have taken these shots. If we can get all eyes on it, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
There's people that know how to solve these problems with the government, with the military, with all these issues.
Mhm.
We just have to, we're listening to the wrong people.
Oh,
And
yes.
you know what I mean? So let's get the bad guys out, get the good guys in, and do what we can locally, get into our communities, keep talking, never give up. And freedom is something that starts inside, and you have to live it. You can't just wait for the government to give it to you. They're never going to do it. You have to live free now, you know? And so that's what I'm trying to encourage people to do. And
Oh
yeah,
my God.
that's my little,
Somebody in your comments wrote, somebody named Ria wrote, "We will not lose, David and Anita. We will never give up. Giving up is not an option." And that's so true. Thank you for saying
see?
that and for all the comments. Yeah, that's so true. Hey, you can't keep me down. You just can't keep me down. And I'm not going to go along just to get along. So there
No,
you go. I'm not,
that's right.
mommy, I told you before, mommy is not playing this game anymore.
We're done
Okay?
playing
Clean up.
this. Yeah.
I'm done playing this. I'm done playing COVID. Okay? I'm over
I'm done.
this. I'm over this. We are done. So we'll keep our eye on all the stuff that's coming up, because there's more court proceedings going on in British Columbia with Bonnie.
Right,
We're going
right.
to bring you those stories. I'm going to do what I can, even if I'm doing it from my phone outside somewhere. We are going to keep covering this. There's more to tell, and there's more to put out there. And if anybody here watches Global, I'm telling you, they're not interested in telling you anything for your health, whether they don't know it or they know it and they're suppressing it, which they are. So just think, that a little bit. Use a little bit of critical thinking. Don't just eat up what they say. Just think a little, and think for yourself. And yeah, here we are. We're gonna just keep going, and I don't know when the ruling will come out about these hearings, but we'll be keeping our eye on that too. Be very interesting to do a post-mortem on that and see what was actually ruled. And I hope it's good news, and I hope that this commissioner will looks at the evidence and make a good decision for Canadians. That's what I hope.
Well, I'm with you, Anita, and I hope you'll come back. Especially, I'd love to have you back when we get more about what's going on in BC with Bonnie Henry, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that also want to know about that, and also moving forward. So let's stay in touch,
Let's stay
and
in touch. Let's start a station, dude.
let's start a station.
Oh, let's
Blow
start.
up the
Let's start
airways
a
with the
little
truth.
news network or something. I'm gonna start something. I have to start something. That's it. Once I figure out all the the technical things, there's potential for us to deliver better than ever.
That's right.
Come on,
There's
we know
always,
what we're
and there's
doing.
lots of great people. We have a lot of great
Yeah,
independent journalism in Canada, a lot of brilliant thinkers. And think about all
yeah.
the people that got fired that are just waiting to do something, and they have lots of skills, lots of knowledge,
Yes,
lots of
we can't
inside
do it
info.
alone. Yeah,
Yeah, let's
yeah.
create a wolf pack and get the truth out. And
And a
that's
six
what it's,
pack.
and a six pack, hopefully. Yeah, keep exercising. Here's your medical advice, although it's
Mhm.
not medical advice. Is do the things that you know work. It's flu season. That's why you're seeing flus. The flu is back. So do the things that you can do. Take care of your body. Be proactive. Eat healthy. Think healthy. Be around healthy people that are positive and encouraging. Don't get
Mhm,
stuck in the drain of this negativity. Don't let it
mhm,
happen. It will affect your health. Stay healthy. Be the example, and get proactive with what you know you can do. And if
mhm,
you do what you can do, and everybody
mhm.
does it, we can clinch this
Yes,
for sure.
Moisturize and exercise. That's what I say.
Moisturize and exercise. That's the name of the show, Anita. That's the name. All right.
Oh, God. Anyway.
Anita, thank you so much for joining me. This was so much fun. I'm sorry if I was a bit all over the place. I was just
No.
jumping after this crazy day, but thank you for joining me. Thanks,
Oh,
everybody.
thank you so much for having me. I hope that that was a good talk, and I hope that people got something out of it. And yes, we'll do it again, and we'll keep in touch, and we'll keep going forward. I just love all those positive things you said. You know, you're saying what people are feeling, and it's fantastic. And thank you so much for having me on today.
My
Great.
pleasure. My pleasure. And thank everybody who watched and commented. Please share this out if you found value in it. Keep sharing all these little clips.
Somebody just said moisturize and exercise. Like, dude, I'm 50 years old. I just thought to tell you that. And I just moisturize
You
and
look it up.
exercise.
It's because
I
of the
don't
moisture.
and the exercise. And
Yeah.
every now and then I take a vitamin D and a zinc and I try to live a happy life. Although this friggin' government's getting me down. But other than that, happy person. You gotta have a good laugh and all that. And so yeah. So anyway.
You got to smile in chaos. So keep it going. Keep shining that
Yeah.
light. And Anita, thank you so much. This was great. We'll do it again soon. And remember, everybody, the
Yeah.
truth is going to win in the end. Mark my words. That's how it rolls. And that's how we roll on this show. So tune in again. We do this weekly. Go check out my website, dwtruthwearer.com. Go watch my free documentary series. We're getting into the occult ancient history of the medical industrial complex. You can get it at cultofthemedics.com. And I'll catch you guys again real soon on Truth Warrior. Cheers, everybody.